Good evening and welcome to Frontrunner Sport Football. We're just looking at the DSTV Premiership that is coming up. Everything has got to do with football movement, all the stories that are happening. My name is Brian Mofuking. I'm joined here by Calvin Sosibo. So nice to finally be in the studio. We've always been talking on YouTube, and now I can really see you smiling and having fun. Let's talk about this. This year has been a very interesting year. But before we talk about some of the stories that are happening, I know the PSL has come up and just been releasing some of the names of the top players for this season. The nominees, in fact, list has come out. We're talking first of all about the young player of the season. We have Bongogu Hlongwane, a young man who's come up very well at Maritzburg United. He has contributed a few goals this season. Goodman Musele, he comes from the Northwest Province. He has done well for Baroque and Middle Park, especially when you look at the sort of players they lost. When Tanzani left, he was the man that took over that position in a holding midfield position, and especially Matuna. These are young stars that you're talking about. From an age point of view, yes, they are all just around 2021. What do you make of that?
First of all, I'd just like to greet the viewers, and finally, as you said, Brian, we meet on the studio, which is a great thing. Going back to I think on the players, it's actually, we still have a mileage to go on them. There's a lot that we actually going to benefit from the players because we're looking at their age and the position that they occupy. So within that being said, I think we're actually going to see much greater things. If they can be recognized and be nominated, that means they're doing something good as youngsters.
When you talk about some of these things here, in particular, let's talk about these players. You've been here before. You've been a young player. People have spoken and raved about you. What happens after this? As a young player, when you get nominated, eventually win the award, what is it you want to do going forward? What would be your advice to players who are still young, who want to get to the level where you eventually were?
I think for me, I was once also nominated for Jet Rookie of the Year, which is sadly I've lost to some of the competitors that were there. I think maybe I was just short within a little bit of a score. But to these players, what I can say to them is that this is the time now where their talent is actually blossoming. So all that they need to do now, it's all about discipline, and then it all has to do with the hard work. They need to put in an extra work to solidify their position, because if you get into this stage and then you drop your guard, you're not actually going to have a successful season, because now when people rave about you and talk about you, you get to actually have a big head and then you start losing it.
There's a player who has raved, who's been absolutely brilliant this season. I know that the footballers, journalists also had an award ceremony where they honored him with the player of the season, talking about Themba Zwane. He had a love-hate relationship with Peter Musimane at some stage. He was dropped from the team, eventually came back, and he showed what he can do. He dominates the list. Let's look at one of the positions he's nominated for. Midfield of the season. He's there alongside Thabo Notata, who made his Bafana debut in the game against Namibia. Lebogang Manyama had a brilliant start until just after he came off when he came back from the COVID break. He really lost a bit of it. But he's nominated along those. So, Lebogang Manyama, a former footballer of the season in South African football, Thabo Notata, key player in the middle of a park for his team, Cape Town CDFC. Themba Zwane need no introduction.
Yeah, for sure. I think for starters, I think Themba Zwane has actually carried Sundowns. I think the players around him actually helped him to be in the position where he is right now today. For him to be nominated for so many awards, I think it's fitting for him. And I think it's a good balance within the players that he's competing with. I think also Manyama feels that he has done quite well himself, but I think he will also raise his hand and say Themba Zwane is actually is on top of their heads in terms of the performance-wise, because Themba Zwane has been the influential player for Sundowns in terms of scoring, creating chances, and if you look at it, he scored more goals actually coming from the midfield more than the other players.
That's just another key one. When Themba Zwane won the SAFJA award, that is the South African Football Journalist Award, he said if for nominees, he wants to nominate Lebogang Manyama. So it's good to see the two of them being penned out in the same nomination list, and we'll see exactly what will happen there. And Notata is also in the mix there. So he has done well for his team, talking about Cape Town City FC. Now, when you look at the defender of the season, it was one of those seasons where you can sit down and say, the league was literally lost right at the end by Kaizer Chiefs with those mistakes they made. Then now Sundowns, on the other hand, Mucheka Madisha, he has been criticized most of the time for some of the mistakes he makes, but he's really stood very well at the back for Mamelodi Sundowns. Rushin De Rieck, for me, has been a wonderful player to watch at Maritzburg United. I mean, we'll talk about that, and also the fact that these nominated players, the coaches will also be touching based on them later on. When you talk about the defenders, these three players, who do you think is going to go to?
I can safely say that he can go to Deruk in terms of his consistency. He's played well. He's carried Maritzburg United as well. With Madisha's case also, I'll come in for him as a youngster coming into a big club like Sundowns. He's done tremendously well for himself. And I think for him to be recognized, I think he's done a lot of good work. He put in a lot of hours in his game, even though I think for a player, what builds you the more is actually when you have a lot of critiques. The only person that you have to prove is yourself. And I think he has actually stood up, and then he's counted in amongst one of the best players, which is Deruk. And then also you also have Cardoso. Cardoso also a strong player aerially, and he's also able to actually to play.
Let's talk about those players. I mean, when you're talking about Madisha, talking about Cardoso, and talking about De Rieck, you're saying De Rieck is the player that has been consistent when you look at the season overall. But then Madisha was part of that defense of Sundowns, because remember that Nascimento was not available for most of the matches. He eventually came back later on in the season to join Madisha in the central defense for Mamelodi Sundowns. Surely with Sundowns win the league, he should be the man that gets a nod automatically, or doesn't it work that way?
No, it should work that way. I think for consistency's sake, I think it should go to Madisha, because he holds up. He actually held up in terms of most of the battles in the field. Nascimento became a player that feeds off from him. So he actually took the principal role which Nascimento was actually occupying. For a youngster, for me, I think taking over from that player, he actually showed a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to just come into the team and fit in. Making mistakes is part of the game, and it's so unfortunate that you make mistakes where you are actually in the critical positions. But for him to get the nod, I think he's done tremendously well.
I'm going to stick with Madisha and say to you now, Sundowns, given the team that they have, surely when opposition are playing against Sundowns, they are defending more than they are taking. So then maybe somebody might come and say, but the Rieck has actually had to work very harder, and Cardoso has had to work very harder. Would you still go with the Madisha?
Yes, definitely. I would have to go with the Madisha as well, because you look at from the person that is taken off from, which is Nascimento, seasonal defender as well. So when you put a youngster into that position, and then it actually gives you distinction. For me, I see it as a distinction because he carried the team up until the final whistle, which is the Won the League. So winning the league, this is the only person that we remember. The rest they are just part of the pack.
All right. I remember when you had a discussion around Itumeleng Khune. The next award, Goalkeeper of the Season. Daniel Akpeyi. He got injured just before the last game. He got injured in the second last game of the season. He was unable to play in the final game of the season because he was replaced by Bruce Vuma in the game that he played in. And eventually, they considered a goal in the last game against Baroka that was 1-1. He was not in goals on the day. He's nominated for the Goalkeeper of the Season. He's alongside Ronan Williams, who has done very well for SuperSport United. And then also Dennis Onyango. Dennis Onyango didn't play as many matches as we would have expected him to play this season. Who do you give it to, given the number of matches these three players have played? I mean, Ronan Williams has been consistent. He has played all the matches. Daniel Akpeyi lost just one or two matches because of that injury plus one match when he was also, when Khune played in the two matches rather, and Bruce Vuma played in one over three matches. So in total, he played around 24 matches in a season, Daniel Akpeyi. Then you got Dennis Onyango, who's played more, he's played lesser matches than the three goalkeepers. Ronwen is there. Lot of clean sheets for Ronan Williams. Same goes for Daniel Akpeyi, Dennis Onyango. Who do you give it to? Given the fact that these are the three.
I'm not going to try and be controversial on this one. I think the numbers itself actually points to Ronan Williams. I think the boys has done well. They had a great turnaround in terms of fixing their position in the league. So undoubtedly, I would actually give it to him. Also, in respect on the people that he's nominated with, and himself, he'll also feel that they've actually pushed him to be in the position where he is, because every match counted for him, because he's the one that played most of the matches more than the other keepers. But that also can play at backhand in you, you can play most of the matches but concede more goals. But for keepers department, actually, I would actually say give credit to the goalkeeper coaches who have actually worked with these players and actually gave them the edge. Because you can play more games, but again, you can concede more games. But the minimal games goals that they've conceded, it's actually put them at that spot. Good competition for the guys, and I'm happy with their performances.
But then Ronan Williams might have had the best clean sheet as far as that is concerned. But remember, as a goalkeeper, how do we judge a goalkeeper? Let me take this one back and say, let's talk about how we judge a goalkeeper. Do we look at the entire defense plus the goalkeeper, or we just look at the goalkeeper himself, how he has performed? Because clean sheet could be kept because of the support structure that he has in front of him. Ronan Williams, if you look at that, if you talk about clean sheets, he will win that hands down.
True.
He will be followed immediately by a Itumeleng Khune. Then comes in Dennis Onyang, given the number of matches played and number of clean sheets that are kept as well in matches. Surely you're already talking about Ronan Williams, but then somebody will say, but Sundowns won the league. Chiefs finished second. And Itumeleng Khune was not there in the last game. That's how they lost the league. What do you say then?
Yeah, for sure. I think you're correct by saying that. And again, it forms back. It goes back to the system that is being played. If you have a stronger defense, I think the keeper actually goes on holiday.
Yeah.
But now, if your defense is one of the busiest or it's a leaking defense, it opens up holes and then keepers get exposed. This is where now we actually see the true characters of keeper. Are they good shot stoppers? Are they good organizers? Are they the one that actually initiate play? Are they the ones that actually wheels up the team when the team is down? Because it's easy if you lose the confidence to the last man, it actually poses a bigger threat.
All right, now we all know that when a team wins, we all celebrate the team. When a team loses, we always blame one guy.
Yeah.
Coaches. These are people that have the most love-hate relationship comes to these gentlemen here. We have Eric Tinkler. Eric Tinkler has done very well. I mean, if you look at his run against Kaizer Chiefs, he's managed to really upset Kaizer Chiefs this season. Against Sundowns also, they did not walk away and just get something from Eric Tinkler's side. He's up against the man that you know now, he's in Al Ali, Puto Musimani. We all know the stories that came out today is that Ernst Bindop is now in Ethiopia. He's doing well there. He's now just taking a job there. Eric Tinkler. So who do you give your money to between those? Because all these coaches, if you look at the ranking at the end of the season, number one, Peter Musimani's team. Number two, you had Ernst Bindop's team. And then Maritzburg United in the top 5. So who do you give it to?
I think numbers don't lie. And then by me saying that, I think the simple direction is that I will give it to Pito. Pito has done tremendously well. He has the trophies that is actually won with the club. It actually proves that to him. Even though the other competitors are there, they've done their parts, but I think Pito actually passed this test with distinction.
All right, he started very late and eventually got what was needed and he managed to win it. In fact, by the way, Maritzburg United finished 7th overall. That's why they're playing Chiefs in the MTN 8. Tinkler. I mean, if you look at them finishing 7th overall, yes, I understand that if you look at the other teams that are sitting in the top 8, Pietersburg's Kevin Hunt, I mean, they call it the last dance, the matches they played. Surely, in my opinion, he should be mentioned somewhere given the fact of how Pietersburg performed, even though they knew they had nothing to play for. In fact, they caused a lot of chaos as far as the league is concerned. They almost stole it towards the end. Shouldn't he be getting a nod?
Yeah, I think for Kevin Hunt, he was supposed to actually get a nod as well to be part of that pack. Reason being, he's actually showed that how professional of a coach he is. Because, I mean, if you have a house that is falling apart, but you still sustain the house to finish well. Yeah. Because now he's actually done a favor to the people that actually brought the franchise. They are easily now on the top 8 because if it was another coach would have actually just said, okay, guys, just go there and have fun. But he kept his integrity, and then he actually was behind the players. I think for him, more than anything, because Kevin is a winner by nature, he always wants to win things. He always wants to bring something on the table. And I think he has proven to us. And I think for me, it's a little bit unfair to actually not involve in a pack while he actually finished so well in the league.
But then somebody will come and tell you that Zimbabwe could have been also there. Given the fact that our Pirates eventually finished in the top 3 and therefore qualifying for the CAF Confederations Cup alongside Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs, who are now in the Champions League. And then you talk also about a team like Cape Town CDFC, Ricky Neke did very well to see the team that eventually propelled into the top 5 bracket of the log standings. So we can argue about that and say, this is what you're going to do. Can you give us a thought on YouTube and tell us exactly what you think as far as the nominees are concerned? We spoke about the defender of the season. We have there, let's talk about the coaches first of all. Eric Tinkler, Ernst Binnendorp, and Pito Musimani. And midfield of the season, that is Themba Zwane. He's the Thabo Notata. And also next to him there, we have, for the midfield of the season, in fact, it was Thabo Notata, Themba Zwane, as well as Lebogang Manyama. Those are the midfielders of the season. Now let's talk about the players. Player, we know that the players vote for the player of the season. Themba Zwane was clear when he won his award recently that he surely believes that Manyama should get something for the season he has had this season. Let's talk about the player of the season. Who do you go with?
You will go for Themba Zwane. I think, again, as we mentioned, the amount of impact that he's actually have on Sundowns, actually, he played a very, 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 very important role. I think with the team, with the squad supporting him as well, he rose above everything because everything was actually centered around Themba Zwane. As Peter will always say, if Mshishi is not playing, you can actually see a performance drop in terms of creativity and the opportunities that they get when they attack. But when Mshishi is around, it's just that one player that has that charisma to change the game. In comparison, that would say when Messi is not playing for Barca, you'll actually tell that it's a different Barcelona. But when Mshishi is playing, Sundowns becomes the Sundowns that people actually are eager to see, that you can actually tell that there's a goal that is coming.
In fact, when you're talking about turning points as far as the league is concerned, I still remember the goal that Themba Zwane scored in the match against Golden Arrows. That for me was a huge turning point in the league overall. Let's talk about a player like Nurkovic this season.
Yeah.
Fairly new player in South Africa, arrives in South Africa, set the PSL alight. He goes and becomes the top scorer for the Amakosi. And also, if you look at the numbers, he became the player that scored most goals in a long time, if you look at it from a Kaizer Chiefs point of view. Then you got Gaston Sereno. When he was missing, you could see there was a massive gap from a Sundowns point of view. Then Shalulile, now we know he's a Sundowns player now, but at Highlands Park, he was the star player. Highlands Park didn't have a lot of stars. They had a lot of grafters in the team, and they were a very fit team. And Themba Zwane also, footballer of the season. Those are the 4 nominees for that award. Who would you give the money to?
Yeah, this one is quite tough. I will try and break it down in terms of the person that I would actually give it to, because I would think in this instance I will actually go for Shaulile. Hard worker as well, create opportunities for himself. Good player that runs off the shoulders, is a fighter, and always have an eye for goal. For Nurkovic as well, you see Nurkovic has been used as a point of reference, which is they play off him, but the way that he played, he was always smart to play in half spaces and create chances for himself. He's clinical on finishes, and then he will actually get most goals that are actually needed. That's why you see Kaizer Chiefs actually being in the position that they're in today. So in totality, what I will say is I will go for Shaulile.
You'll go for Shalulile. Why not Themba Zwane? Let's talk about Sundowns, because football of the season talks about all the PSL competitions. Talking about the MTNA, talking about the Telkom Knockout, you're talking about the Nedbank Cup, you're talking about DSTV Premiership itself, because now you're going to be calling DSTV Premiership going forward. Sundowns won 3 of those trophies this past season. Themba Zwane instrumental in all those competitions for Sundowns this season. Shalulile, Highlands Park got to the final of the MTN8. They lost eventually in the final of the MTN8. He was the top scorer at the beginning of the season, lost the momentum, came back, eventually finished tied with Kapatino Mango. Then you have Nurkovic, who has been there, not scoring, supplying sometimes for Kaizer Chiefs. The same goes for Sereno. Discipline issues for me has been the biggest problem for Sereno. He's a temperamental player, but a brilliant player overall, if you talk about him. Surely one of them could take it, and you're staying with Shalulile. Are you still staying with Shalulile? And you still stay? Don't you think these other players really should be having a look in, given what you've stated?
Yes, I think the other players should actually have a look in, but my strong personal view is that I think Shalulile actually has stood out for me, as much as Nurkovic. But I would still go to Shalulile in terms of his work rate, and in terms of, if you look at him also, you have to look at Highlands Park. Highlands Park is a team that works on hard work. Sundowns, Chiefs, and the rest of the players that are there. you have to understand that they have a structure whereby they can actually provide for Nokovic to actually to score. They make means in doing that. But for Shaolile, you find at some matches that will be carrying actually the whole team, which is Highlands Park. So his work ethics proves. So now when he's placed in a team that actually have the same capabilities as your Chiefs and your Sundowns, it actually puts him in a better position. That's why now I'm actually seeing a better Shaolile that's going to have more strength.
Then, given your statement, I can come up and say Ntuli single-handedly helped AmaZulu survive relegation. And if you're talking about a player that plays within a team that doesn't have the sort of personnel that the top three you're talking about, your Sundowns, your Chiefs, your Pirates has, but he had to graft and work very hard and help the team survive, then surely he should also be given something for his performance overall. Or should it be a club-based because it only helped him survive relegation?
Yeah. I think that one actually should go to actually the people that are doing the nominees. I think they should have actually done their numbers correctly to give also Ntuli the nod, because I think for me also he's done tremendously well. He has single-handedly actually carried AmaZulu out of relegations and in competitions that they've played. They are where they are today because of Ntuli, with all the goals that he scored. In fact, he's the only player that has scored goals for that team. So for me, I will actually put him on that mix to compete with those other players.
Nah, the other two goal scorers for AmaZulu. I know that he helped them survive in crucial matches. I still remember the goal that he scored at the FNB Stadium when they won against Kaizer Chiefs. It was a crucial goal indeed. But let's talk about the season that is coming up now. We know the nominees are there. We'll talk also later on about the nominees for the finalists for the MTN 8, the Telkom Knockout. All of those, we'll talk about those later on. You can still get involved, by the way. Send your messages, send us your clips, and actually your questions as to what you want us or what you think of the things that are happening. Season that's coming up. Let's talk about the teams that will be representing South Africa in CAF competitions. We have 4 teams. But 3 of those are 1, 2, 3 in the last season. You have your Mamelodi Sundowns on top. You have Kaizer Chiefs. You have Orlando Pirates. What can we expect from a Sundowns team that has now changed things around? Peter Musiman is gone now to Al Ahly. You now have a joint co-coaches in Rulane Mokoena alongside Manoma Mngliti, who both been there when Peter won it. And then you have Steve Compella been brought in as a senior coach. Let's talk about that first, senior coach. We in South Africa, we're used to having a coach and having an assistant coach. Now you have a new phrase called senior coach. Is it just playing with words? Is he assistant or what is he?
I think for me, it's the first time also I'm hearing of that, where you have a senior coach within the coaches. I don't know how it works. I think it's the first time. Maybe we're going to get used to it, and then maybe we're going to have to understand maybe as we commit to the league in terms of what is the role that Steve has to play initially. So moving back to the CAF as well, where you're looking at teams that are going to compete in the CAF Cup. I think for Sundowns as well, they have the ammunition and they have the power. They can still go on. They can still place their plans because, I mean, they're spoiled for choice. They've got abundant players to actually to compete for the CAF. I'm just worried more about when it comes to Chiefs, because actually they are standing on one leg when it comes to this competition. Reason being, where you find that they are not actually so busy in the markets that they cannot sign because they still have a pending case that they have. So for them, it actually puts them at a disadvantage. But overall, I think for Sundowns, actually, it's still going to be beneficiary for them because the number of squad that they actually have. So they have the capacity.
Let's talk about, you just mentioned Kaizer Chiefs. We had Sfiso Hlante training with them. Do you stay there? Do you still train with a team that you know that the future's uncertain? You don't know exactly if ever they'll be able to sign you or not. Monare was there training. Sundowns, Pirates have snatched him since. If you look at the number of players that came from Vets that are at Pirates now, you can actually, somebody's calling it Vets Light, at the number of players they have in the team. Do you still, as a player, if you were to advise a player as Sfiso Hlante, do you say stay there and train with them, or do you try and look for a home elsewhere?
Well, for me, I think for Sfiso Hlante, I think actually he wants to play for Kaizer Chiefs. So for him, I would advise him to stay if he sees the opportunity, because I see it for him, because he's a well-needed player on that position that is open. So I think for him, if things goes well for Chiefs, even though it's dragging, with a player of Sfiso Hlanti's caliber. I think he's got the height, he's got the attacking ability defensively. He's an international player. He knows the league domestically in and out. So I think he's an addition to the team. So for him, I think he sees the reason why he's training there, because he knows that he's going to get an opportunity to play for such a big team.
Should Chiefs not win the case? Should Chiefs not have their ban lifted? What sort of a team can you expect? Let's look at the reality now. The Chiefs does not get the ban lifted. They find themselves now having to start the season without any players coming into the team. They've already recalled most of the players they've sent out on loan stints, which are mostly young players. What do you do then? What sort of starting 11 can you look at from a Chiefs point of view? Remember that Norkovic, there's still rumors that they are wanted elsewhere. There's a rumor that Frosler could be going also. There's still rumors that Karma is still wanted, but Karma has come out to say, no, he's staying, this is home. So what sort of starting 11 can you look at? And Gavin Hunt, when he gets in there and realized that he might not be able to have that, they've got CAF Champions League coming up. They have all the different competition in the country to look at.
Top 8.
Is the squad going to be able to be able to compete at that level if they don't have players?
Knowing Gavin's as character, I think he'll work around the squad. He's done it at SuperSport, where he had almost a younger squad, which is actually to pull it through. And he's done it in terms of building up the squad into greater heights. Even though it won't be easy because it's a new environment for him, it's a different setup. But I think everybody at this point will actually get an opportunity. And especially now, this goes back to Chiefs having to do things properly in terms of development structures. Do they have enough players to actually who are ready to actually to take up this position? Because now it brings us back into that position whereby if you have your development intact and it's running well, you won't be struggling. But them having Atazwane there, you can actually pinpoint a few players that can actually be a good addition to the team.
Let's talk about the CAF Champions League. Kaizer Chiefs is there. They've always been a team that crashes out very early in the Champions League. When you look at the challenges they're facing at the moment, I know that everybody wants to see a team that is of Chiefs caliber challenging and campaigning and fighting at that level. What do you do? Which do you sacrifice? Because you have 5 trophies to play for. Which one do you actually sacrifice out of those? Or do you just try and go for everything and see what happens?
Well, at this point, I think the best one, you can always try your methods. You're given an opportunity, you qualified to be on that stage. So I think for me, trying all of them out, you cannot actually handpick and say, I want to go for this one or that one, because at this point, you're not in an advantage position. You're actually disadvantaged because of the stories that are around you and the ban and so forth. But if you were a fitter squad and you are able to be busy on the market as well, I'm sure they would actually love to actually to give their fans a bit more to actually to talk about, so as like your Sundowns be as more competitive as them, and trying to go as further as in the competition. Being also on the top 8 as well, for them, it's not going to be easy. With Maritzburg as well, having a full squad, and then Gavin Hunt is actually standing on 1 foot, I think it's going to be beneficiary for Maritzburg to actually to exercise this opportunity to climb up, to get into the competition that you're going to have further.
When do you refresh your squad? Let's talk about the fact that they're unable to get the ban lifted. They have all these young players who are available to them because they're part of the team already, having played in reserve league. So if you look at the current squad they have, Katande, over 30. Ramahlwe Mpahlele, over 30. Kadoso, over 30. Matoho, just clocking on the 30 mark, just gone over 30 as well. Talking about the goalkeeping department, Itumeleng Khune, over 30 already. We know goalkeepers play longer, even if they can be. Bernard Parker, also over 30. Manyama, over 30. Middle of a park, already talking about a guy, the fresh guy. He's also just running around the 30 mark. So isn't this the right time for Chief to refresh the squad and say, we have a lot of these young players that we have in the developmental side. We can't sign new players now. Can't we just bring those and fuse them with the squad that already have existing and try and build a team around these new players with these senior players at additions? Or am I asking for too much? Would the fans be asking for too much?
Yeah, I think first of all, Brian, where it starts in terms of, do you have your development intact?
Yeah.
When we talk refreshment, we have to talk about in terms of the material that we have.
Yeah.
So if we do not have material, we cannot be refreshing. So what Chiefs is left with now is actually to go on with what they have. But should they had the right pillars in terms of forming the development to be strong and competitive, I think it was going to be much easier. And it actually screams for it to say, now refresh me, refresh me, refresh me. But now they don't have that capacity to do that because they don't have the backing of a development where they can take on those players. Which players that we're going to take from a development, and then we're going to say they are ready players that can walk in and then replace Katsande or go in and replace Manyama. All those players that we've mentioned, which are those players that are coming from their ranks, which are supposed to be beneficiary to the squad.
That's what I'm saying. That is the big thing there now. Maybe somebody might come up and says maybe it's time that you can think about refreshing the squad and seeing what you can be able to do going forward. I know they've got the likes of Itumeleng Khune, one player that's very brilliant to watch. They've got your Mbatas, very young players. Your Blom coming in also from a development rank of the team. They the Chopin who were sent on loan stint. They can bring all those players back and try and see what they can do. We've spoken about Chiefs. I've spent a lot of time on Chiefs. We'll wait and see what will happen going forward. Should the ban be lifted? Who do they bring in, and what do they think if the ban is lifted?
If the ban is lifted,
let's say now you're sitting at Chiefs. You have the checkbook, an open checkbook. Say, go and get us players. Who do you bring in?
I would actually go for Santi because he's very well needed in terms of that position.
Yeah, I think KZN connection there.
Yeah.
Santi really has been touted like seriously. Yeah. I don't know what is it, but it's a Santi thing for continuously. Yeah?
I think for you to be an international player, that gives you already it gives it away to be the one actually who if you are available, you are actually given the nod. Yeah. So I think I will also go for him. We still have a player that actually took his clearance from TTM, which is Nange.
Yeah.
I think also I will actually I'll be open to that as well. And other few more players that I will actually want to bring in. There's a player also that is training with the Chiefs as well, which is coming from Vets as well. So some of those players that are actually available that could be a good fit for me. I think for now, those positions that I can actually make changes of more or less like in the middle. And then also in defense, because Cardoso just left. So I would actually try and strengthen actually the back line and also in the midfield. In terms of the other department, I think they're still fairly okay, only if Nokovic doesn't go.
Okay. Itumeleng Khune players, coaches will tell you that when you have Khune on the field of play, you already have that extra distribution for your team. He was out injured for most of the season, eventually came in right at the end. And we all know what happened in the last day of the season. We can't really blame him for that for the rest of our lives. The reality is he's really done well for Chiefs. As Gavin Hunt, there's a new coach coming in. Do you go with Akpe, who's been there, who has done very well for the team in the absence of Khune? Or do you try Vuma? Or do you now say, Khune, you are ready, you're fit, let's go with you as you have always known? Or is Khune's time now come and gone?
No, I wouldn't say his time has come and gone, and I will actually take that. I'll actually have my back against the wall. I think now it's a new season, it's a fresh start, and again, we have to look at the fact that Akpe was actually stretched off the field on the last matches and with concussion. So we don't know in terms of his fitness how far is Akpe. But if Akpe is well and then is fitter to play, I will actually go for him for consistency's sake. And just to give balance. As for Brian, for Vuma, as well, I will also include him in the pack. Just at least maybe get some hunger from Khune as well, and try to maybe rebuild himself and understand the magnitude or in terms of the team that he's actually in. He's won some things for the teams, important trophies that he's brought in home. But then again, we have to look at in terms of his game. Is it dropping or is it peaking? He needs to actually to sit back now and really understand and analyze himself, because these guys are coming, and Akpe has shown that he wanted to be one of the best.
This indeed, Itumeleng Khune has been one of the best by far in South African football. When he was not there was something missing from a Chiefs point of view. Communication is something that he's very brilliant at. Do you think, if you think back of the season that just ended, and you think about some of the goals they conceded in some of the matches, Do you think when a Khune was there, that could have been avoided?
They could be avoided because undoubtedly, I would say to you that leadership skills has got one of the amazing leadership skills.
Yeah.
I think what actually makes his game to be more interesting, or to actually, when you see him actually in goals, what gives you that motivation that you're going to come up with a positive result is the way how he actually pose himself towards other players. He's the one that always backs the players, motivates the players. He makes a save. A defender does blocks a tackle. He's the one that actually comes up and congratulates those players, lift the guys up, and then put the guys in the game. And also him being a player that will always initiate play. It actually a plus for defenders that maybe might not be able to actually to start play, because you have a keeper that can play from a route one that will lead to a goal. But knowing Chiefs that within a team that actually likes playing football, so he's the actually good fit when it comes to that. Even though Agbe, his footwork is not one of the greatest, but in terms of saves, he's actually come close to Khune.
He's indeed, Itumeleng Khune is by far South Africa's best goalkeeper we've had in a long time. In fact, he does hold a record in Bafana colours also from a goalkeeping department, surpassing that record previously held by Andre Arendse. Over 35 clean sheets in Bafana colours by Itumeleng Khune. Now, I know you don't like these topics about Itumeleng Khune. You always want to support. And I for one, have always, I remember the late, one of the former commentators of mine used to say that he's Mzanti's number one. And he's by far the best we have.
Yeah.
And you always applaud when you see him on a field of play because you know what he's going to deliver. Hypothetically speaking, I'm Gavin Hunt. I'm a new coach at the team. I'm trying to build my new team now going forward. I'm thinking, Khune has been there. He has won everything. Does he have the hunger? And I decide to drop him. What happens then?
I think at this point, it's best to actually to look at the benefit of the team. It's not about an individual, but it's about the team. If Akpe, as I said, if he's fit and ready, I will play him at any time, because he's actually finished the league on a high. Unfortunately, he got injured and then he had to be stretched off the field. But should he recover early and then to be part of the team? If Khune does not play, I think also him, it builds up the hunger as well. To learn from another player that is actually playing, and always to be able to eliminate also his mistakes that he's making. Even though some of the things that you can't control, like injuries, he's been injured most of the time. And then again, what we'll say, we're throwing back and say, they're trying to assemble a team that is going to be able to compete.
Okay, talking about too big, I'm not going to say anything because I think you're talking about me. Let's move on to the next thing that is very important. We spoke about Kaizer Chiefs. Now, Orlando Pirates, on the other hand, they've just been signing players. Sundowns started it by signing an entire squad. Then Pirates have joined the party of signing players. Now they just added Monare to the list of players that have signed. Let's talk about a Pirate season that is coming up. Zimbabwe arrived at Pirates. Then they had Rulana Mokoena sitting on a bench. They also had Fatu David, his younger brother, was there, Mahir, assisting as well in that coaching department. Then we saw the departure of Rulana Mokoena going to Chipa United. Eventually now surfaces now, remember the Sundowns, where they won the league with Sundowns. What sort of Pirates are we expecting this coming season, given the number of players that have signed and the new face we are seeing in the Orlando Pirates? Zimbabwe. I know Eddie has spoken so much about Zimbabwe, saying that he was going to go, Gavin was going to take his position. We now know he's staying.
Yeah.
What must he do different this season?
I think for me, for Zimbabwe, this is, for me, I would say it's up to him to lose it.
Yeah.
Because the squad that is assembled, or the signings that are made, are all compatible players that are actually on that team. Like you look at your Hlachwayos that they brought in to actually to assist Happy Jele.
Yeah.
They brought in your Forster on the right back to actually to give an attacking balance in terms of they having players that are going up and down, because you know that Dube actually left the squad as well.
Yeah.
And then you look at the midfielders as well, where they've been struggling. But now they're going to have a nice pairing. I would actually want to see where you have your Ben Motsware and Munaring actually in the middle, because now we just lost Mlambo as well. So for Zimbabwe, I think he's got a confident squad, and he's got a squad that can actually compete. Looking at the front forward as well, you got your Hoto as well, and then you have your Vincent Pule, Lodge with a good Lodge, with his head on his shoulders. I think we're going to actually have a force to be reckoned with from Pirates. I think they have a best squad.
Yeah, you're talking about players that played at Wits. Yes, the fact that they've played together, they'll know each other very well. I thought someone Kolamlam would be given a second chance to see what he can do for the Buccaneers, but he's gone. Mulenga, on the other hand, I mean, I never saw that coming. Augustine Mulenga, for me, was one player that gave it his all every time he got given a chance to play and did exceptionally well. In fact, scoring, also getting involved in goals in the derbies and everything else. So he's gone also. I mean, he's among the players that have left Orlando Pirates. And Dengani, central defense pairing, he's gone also.
I think the refreshing of the squad actually comes at a critical point, because now I think the chairman as well is looking to compete as well, because they know they're going to CAF. So they need, as much as they need good players, best quality players that they actually can get on the market. I don't think they are affected with the COVID, with teams actually being sold left and right. But I think with them having a balanced budget to actually get those players to compete in the CAF Cup. So all those players that are actually bought and then fitting on the system, I think they are a good refresh. I would wish maybe for Mlambo to be given a second chance, but now we have to look at the different dynamics. Pirates actually wants to get that star onto their jersey again, because now this is an opportunity that comes. So now with having players at that magnitude, I think we're going to have more players that will actually be replaced. Actually the one that's going to lift their hands and say, hey, we want to fight for this club, because being brought to Pirates, it's a big thing. That's a team of history.
But if you compare Pirates, if you look at the way they played and look at maybe Kaizer Chiefs, for an example, the way they played, Pirates still played entertaining football. They still looked very good. They were good on the eyes when you looked at them play. So you still have the technical team that has been there before. Yes, you've got new players. If you were sitting in a team, what would be your approach this season? Given the fact that you want to challenge for everything, you want to be able to bring the glory days back. It's a rare thing to find the top teams or the supposedly big teams in the country having gone 5 years, 6 years now without any trophy. Pressure is there. It's mounting pressure. Whether you're studying today or studying yesterday, the pressure remains that the trophies are needed.
True. That's why I'm saying for Pirates, the only problem that they actually have more was actually conversion rates. I think now they've bought the good firepower in terms of actually rectifying that department. Within the defensive line as well, as I've been saying, they are more solid now and they have a balanced signing. All those players that are actually being signed are all compatible players, and I think they are fitting well in the squad. So I think now it comes back to a coach's favorite headache, where he's going to suffer in terms of who does he needs to put, because all the players that are there, without any disrespect to the others that has left, but that have made way. So for those who are brought in, it gives a good balance, and then it's actually create more healthier competition in the squad.
When I saw Ofori having his bag at the airport the other day, and he had changed colors, but I think he was going on national duty. I assume that he's actually coming to Joburg. When you think about the goalkeeping department, Wayne Sandilands, who can forget the blind that they played against SuperSport, where he made those 2 brilliant saves. I thought maybe he might even make the list for the goalkeeper of the season, given how he performed towards the end of the season. The way he really exerted himself very well from a Pirates point of view. There's a rumor that Ofori could be coming on board. I know that Dell, we told also, he also just decides he wants to, part ways and decides to go. Do you need Ofori at Pirates? Is that from a competition point of view or to bring stability to the team? Or why are you bringing Ofori to a Pirates that already has a center that's done very well, that has proven he can actually hold his own against the best in the country?
I will bring Ofori at any time. Good leader, strong keeper, good communicator. Also as well, you quite are certain. The reason why Marius Beck has done so great is because of his presence, the way he controls his defense, and actually passing the message. So I will need him for actually, because Pirates have a bigger task at hand, which is they have CAF and they've got these competitions that they have to participate on. So having that and having a keeper of that magnitude, it actually also gives you a headache to say, these are my 2 best keepers that I can take anywhere where I'm going. So having Ofori there as well, it actually solidified the squad, as I've said, with the number of players that have come in to join. We're going to see, as much as Pirates actually finished well and they were playing free, entertaining football. Now we're going to have a more tactical Orlando Pirates team that's going to be competing.
So you believe that the happy days are back?
Happy days are back for sure. Mamelodi
Sundowns. Let's talk about Sundowns. I mean, here we have Peter Musimani, after winning a treble in South Africa, finishing the quarterfinals, towards the end of the CAF Champions League. Eventually knocked out by Al Ahly. He has now signed for Al Ahly. He arrives there, they win the league. Yes, the league was already done.
Yeah.
He's looking at the semi-final of the Champions League for Al Ahly. Then you have a change in the setup of the technical team of Sundowns. He took along with him, the fitness trainer. The man has made sure Sundowns players look lean and mean as they've been. And plus, the man that analyzes the team also has gone with him. With the new setup that Sundowns has now, given the number of players that are signed, remember all these players were signed with Pito sitting at the helm of Mamelodi Sundowns.
Yes.
Those players that are coming in, from your Margeman to your Kapinga to all those players that have been signed, Ricardo Goss has done very well for himself, Mukif Mutupa, Domingo. Before we even got to the last players they signed now, Shalulile and Vala arriving, they're already sitting on 11 players. They've now gone to a 16 players or so forth. How do those players fit in the Sundowns team? And I understand that Mangoba Mngqithi was there as well as Ranamukwe, when they were there when those players were being signed. Do you think they will have the same plan for those players as Pito? Will it be a continuation? Or are they going to have to rethink and reshape the way they think? Because now they've got Steve Compella as well, who have joined the technical team.
I think it's going to be more of a reshaping of the ideas. I think within the fresh blood actually being thrown in with another head actually being on the team, it's going to have maybe a different perspective. As they said, that the coach is actually Steve Compella came in as a technical director, so to say. So I think he's got an eye for all those other players and then he knows them. So within whatever that they've signed, I think he's got a picture because Mangoba and Steve, they are more or less in the same line of thoughts. So actually it will be easier for them to work around the squad. No matter how big it is, for them it's a good headache because they've got one of the most quality players that they have on the helm.
Mangoba Mngqithi has been there for the longest of time, so he understands exactly what the players they have are capable of doing. And when you go and when you visit people that are cooking and they're always sitting there, they always talk about too many cooks who spoil the broth. Let's talk about Steve Compella's position, because I understood when we had the co-coaches, a lot of us were saying these are two good coaches. Will they work together as co-coaches? That's number one. Remember at Pare, they tried something similar to that. When you had Rulani alongside Micho.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a conflict there situation. Now, you have the two of them working. You have Steve Compella coming in to join them. What is going to be Steve's role? Let's talk about his role as coming to Sundowns.
I think on a technical perspective, actually Steve is actually going to be the one that actually give the detailed planning in terms of how the philosophy, how he maintains the philosophy of the team that needs to be upheld. And with Mangoba being the longest and Rulani knowing the culture, it could be a power in terms of a power clash, but I don't see it happening because these guys know each other, which is Mangoba and Steve. So I'm sure also Mangoba put in a word for Steve because they are good friends. So within, he would have felt that, okay, let me bring Steve since I know him, because Pito brought Mangoba to Sundowns because he felt that was the person that he can work with. So for me, I think it's not going to be much of a problem. It could arise at a later point, but knowing these two, they can actually have a good balance because these two coaches, which is Mangoba and Steve, they are both teachers, so they understand the dynamics very well.
And Rulani is a student of the game indeed, so he will be looking to come in there. Sundowns have been controlling the league in South Africa. Pito is no longer there. Pirates and Chiefs, everybody was saying that they need to gang up to try and stop the Pretoria Soccer League teams from taking everything. Will they fight that hard? Will they be able to fight that hard as they've done? Or is just because it's a culture that's there at Sundowns now, it's not going to change? And how will the two other giants you're talking about, your Chiefs and the Pirates, how will they come to try and neutralize the team that has been a powerhouse for the longest of time?
Yeah, I think what works for Sundowns is actually they start their plans early. So it doesn't help with the other teams trying to catch up, not knowing, not actually having their first brick being laid. So within that being said from them, I think they need to actually to look back because Sundowns actually started this way longer than the other teams. So their winnings now a benefit of whatever that they've put into plan. Now all the plans are coming to fruition, and it's all about now that they have to get the other the continuation going.
Yeah.
So with other teams that are actually below, they still needs to get their structures properly and actually trying to, when they want to compete with Sundowns. Sundowns is ahead in terms of they also have the financial muscles as well. So the other teams, it's not that they are handicapped, but also they have critical people that are actually involved on that technical stuff, which is from your scouting point of view, and actually making sure that they're trying to keep the religion or the tradition of the club, getting players that are younger into the team as early as they can, so that they can have continuation. If team that they can have more continuation like that, they can then now match up with Sundown.
Right, I mean, if you talk about it, talking about the culture of the team and everything else, there's already one of the players in Sundowns, Mahalwa, is being nominated also, the youngster.
Player, yes.
So we know that they've done very well. And Pito said a lot about that young man. There's also another player, Mkulise, whom they call him Pito, that young man. So he says Pito is also there to show and do what they can do. Now we have TTM that have gone out to the market. They're signing players from Brighton, Hlongo. They've brought in to the team. I saw Mulenga has been unveiled also, the new player that has just joined the team there, and Shonga. So these are the players that are coming into a team that is new. They've released also, they've seen that the coach that was sitting is no longer there. Joel Masuta is the man that's sitting on a bench of the team. Let's talk about them. They're going to be the new kids in the Premier Division this season after buying the state of Bidvest. What can you expect from them? Given the signings they've made so far, given the players they've released also as a team, what can you make of them? Are they going to be one of those a yo-yo team that comes in and leaves, or are they going to be able to stay and really stay their claim?
I think for them, they just need to get their house in order first. That's the first things and for utmost, because
elaborate on that. House in order. That's an interesting statement. Let's talk about that.
Like getting their things in order, because they're signing players now. They're letting players go.
Oh, yes.
So it's like they are trying to actually go into a way where they're trying to do yo-yos with the player in terms of the league. So if they carry on like that can actually pose a threat to them, because if you want to compete and you're in a high league, we expect you to do things in a professional way. Now, if you're going to be like firing players before they even kick a ball, or now you're putting players that are not part of the team, you're actually creating a discomforting mood for the other players. So I think for them, in terms of the players that they brought in fairly experienced players. But then again, it goes back to the point that the players that they are bringing are the players that are available or the players that they are inquiring to get. There's a difference, because if a player that is available, no matter how the experience is, because if they were not playing, then what's the use to actually get the player back in the team?
Let's talk about TTM. I mean, don't we need the spirit of fair play in football? They lose a game, they still congratulate the team they lost against. So there should be something good.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that one later. I know Jose Mulangwan is among the players that have signed there at TTM. Their first game, they're up against Super Sport, defending champions of the MTN8, a team that has been in the final 3 times in a row. In fact, Super Sport United, if you look at the records, the other team that's done that to be in the final 3 years in a row is Kaizer Chiefs way back in the days. They've joined the lead group, but they won it twice, or the 3 times they've been in the final. Can Super Sport United start very well and going forward, or what's going to happen?
I think Super Sport actually will have an advantage. The advantage would be posed because of the TTM actually not being orderly ready for the league. Why I would say not orderly ready, because of the way they are doing things in terms of their boardroom stuff. So with Super Sport, I think they can actually fairly go the furthest on this competition, and I see a win for this one for them, while they can actually catch the team that is trying still to adjust to a new league, even though that you might have players that are actually accustomed to the league. But then yet again, you have new management style. You don't know how things are actually being run on that side. So you get a Super Sport that is competitive, that finished well. And I think I see them to be stronger than TTM on this.
All right, so you're giving that one to Super Sport United.
For sure.
Line?
2-1.
2-1 to Super Sport United.
Because rookies always have that in them to actually to cause an upset. But I don't think at this time it actually is going to go that far. They might get a goal, but that goal is just to show them to step in authority that they've arrived.
Okay, I can tell you a story, an interesting story.
Yeah.
The team that was a rookie in 2016-17 season, they just bought the status of a Pumala Black Aces. They got into the final of a cup tie in South Africa and won it. That's a story for another day. Pirates versus Cape Town CTFC. The same team I'm talking about, Cape Town CTFC. They are a team that rise to the occasion. Now, they've lost a key player. Kemet Erasmus has since joined Sundowns. How much of a blow is that move of Kemet from Cape Town City to Sundowns how much of an impact they're going to have on the way they play, because they relied so much on him as a player that he used to take them forward? How is that going to affect them?
It's going to affect him tremendously because Kemet is a hard worker himself. He's always have an eye for a goal. And I think at this point, leaving the team at this stage for Cape Town City, it's actually going to put Cape Town City at the back foot to lose somebody who's a goal poacher. But I'm sure the coach actually has a plan, and he's got players that are going to be fitting there. I would love to see maybe a change of environment, and then maybe more appreciation from Dooley actually moving and then covering that space, because himself, he can fit into that role in terms of how those guys actually play, which is Cape Town City.
I've seen some players have got some extension as far as their contracts are concerned, plus some more money going their way from a Cape Town City FC point of view. But history will tell you that when the two teams do meet, it's always very interesting. Cape Town City always surprises Pirates. Tell you in 2000 and 18-19 season, there was a young man who made his debut in the Premier Division. He scored a goal against Pirates, his first goal when he played in. His name was, we'll get back to that one. Let's go to the next one. Chiefs against Maritzburg United. Eric Tinkler's record against Chiefs, impeccable. Against Gavin Hunt, on the other hand, there's something that comes up there when you talk about Gavin Hunt against Eric Tinkler. But Gavin Hunt, his first job, his first game in charge of Kaizer Chiefs, to see what he's planning for Chiefs, will be against Maritzburg United. How do you see that one pending?
As I said, I think I see Maritzburg actually having an upper hand on this one. Why? Because they have a fully functional squad. They've got most of their players. They just recently signed Meza from Sundowns, who's actually going to assist now. I'm just so keen to understand in terms of how Eric's going to play with Judas and then Meza. Who is he going to bench, or is he going to go for a double strike, two number 9s, or how is he actually going to plan out? But I see him actually coming at the top, with while Chiefs actually having those problems in terms of the ban.
The repeat of the Nedbank Cup finals, Sundowns versus Bloemfontein Celtic. You know, Sundowns edged Celtic in the final. They're winning that encounter. Now, the coach at Bloemfontein Celtic, he's a man that's been there. You understand the culture of the team. I mean, he has played there. He was a captain of a team at some stage. He became the team manager. He eventually became the coach of the team. I think their planning on the final was just something that they should have done better. They allowed Sundowns to play and allowed Sundowns to eventually win against them. How do you see this one pinning out? Sundowns against Bloemfontein Celtic. Sundowns with all the star players they've signed. Celtic, a team that has struggled. We have seen also the likes of Letlabika, who was a key player for Celtic, also having to depart and go and join TTM. The sort of Celtic that's going to come up against Sundowns. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, first of all, I think within losing Letlabika as well, they also gained some players who actually went to a Celtic's way. I think Maduka now has to just rectify the smaller elements. I think now the games is going to change because there's a new technical team at Sundowns.
Yeah.
And I think the way of planning is not going to be the same as how they planned for them. So I think Maduka might have a little bit of an upper hand, irregardless in terms of how much of a personnel Sundowns has.
Yeah.
But for me, I think Maduka, for him to go as far as he went, I think it's actually going to show now in terms of the mistakes that he made in the last minutes where he lost the cup. This is for him to rectify and prove himself, because now he's actually at the helm. He makes the decision and he's the guy now to go for, and the players understand him. You got players like your Mabena, you got players, you still have the majority of the squad, because the only player that you have lost is actually Letlabika.
Mabena does have a good record against Sundowns, by the way, so he'll be looking to continue that run that has had over the years. So it's been an interesting conversation we have had today, and you have had his prediction as far as the wins are concerned, who's going to win in MTN 8 and march on to the semi-finals. As to that will happen, we'll find out when the matches do happen. So it's going to be an interesting one to look at as well. Later on the South African football, there's going to be talking more, and from 8 p.m. onwards with Velile Nyandu. He will be having a conversation with Timothy Batabaire as well as Greke Tafia. We'll be focusing more now on the African side of football as well as Jeff Katala. So do stay tuned for that one at 8 p.m. That conversation will start. Yeah, I know Timothy, I know which team will be rooting for as far as Sundowns and Celtic are concerned. So thank you very much for having me and for joining me for this one here today. I realize that you still have a soft heart for Khune, so we'll support Khune to make sure Khune does come back. Until we meet again for more of the talk on football in South Africa and also on the continent. Ciao, ciao.